Hey there folks, John here with ThruMyLens, and today I'm coming to you with another photography related video. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the new Canon R5 Mark II, and I want to compare it a little bit to the predecessor to the R5 Mark II, which is the R5. Now, I've been shooting the R5 since about, the fall of 2022. So I had a little over 2 years with it. Of course, I'd been looking forward to the new R5 Mark II. It had been heavily rumored for, over a year before it was actually released, and we saw the specifications. And when those specifications were first announced, I have to admit, I was a little disappointed. Mainly because most of the upgrades in the R5 Mark II over the R5 really centered on the autofocus system and also the frame rate. So very much enhancements which were geared for action shooting. And I don't do a whole lot of action shooting. Mostly what I do is, product photography, watches, cars, landscape, street. Occasionally I'll do something action oriented, but it's certainly a minority of what I primarily do in my photography. So I didn't want to end up in a situation like with the Fujifilm X100VI, where I kind of dilly-dallied and thought about it and didn't put in the pre-order. So I went ahead and put in the pre-order right away. Then I kind of went and watched a lot of the initial first impression kinds of videos of folks that were invited to Canon's release event, and I almost canceled my pre-order because I didn't see where it was going to be worth the money over the R5, which I had and I love. The R5 is a great camera. Slowly, more information started coming out. There were some things that about the R5 Mark II which made me, think, well, other than just future-proofing, it will probably, not be a completely worthless upgrade for me. Clearly the pre-continuous shooting was going to be a big deal. Clearly, some other nice things like the eye-controlled autofocus. Thought maybe that's something that I might like to use. One of the things that was of interest, and I didn't talk a lot about this in my written photo review, but the R5 Mark II adds Canon Log 2 or C-Log 2. So again, there were a lot of little quality of life things that as much as I came very close to canceling the pre-order several times, I never did. And I'm glad, because when the R5 Mark II here did come, I was extremely impressed. Again, this video is really meant to be a supplement to my written photo review that's found on ThruMyLens. There's a link to the description box. I did a lot of test photos, and they are in that review. And one of the things I was really interested in was dynamic range, because there was a lot of speculation that the dynamic range would actually be better on the R5 than on the R5 Mark II. And I think I pretty well dispelled that particular myth in my review. But right away, I also noticed that even though it's not something that Canon really talked about in their marketing materials, and it's not something that the reviewers who did their initial reviews really talked about, there is an image quality difference between the R5 and the R5 Mark II. The R5 Mark II is a bit sharper, and the color accuracy is just a little bit better. It's not something that's hugely noticeable unless you're looking at side-by-side photos like I have in my written photo review, but it is there, and there is improved image quality, and I was really pleased. Really fantastic camera. There's really not a lot to complain about. Again, I talk a lot more about in detail the specifications and some of the things I tested. Going back to C-Log 2, because I didn't talk about that in my written photo review, I have been able to record a couple of videos, and I've used C-Log 2, and I really like it. I really like it a lot. Overall, I edit in Final Cut Pro, and I do my color grading in Cinema. I think it's called Cinema Pro. The experience is much easier. I find that I'm able to get much more accurate exposure and in particular color when I'm grading the footage. Really do like C-Log 2. It's C-Log. I was able to use it and I was able to get good results. C-Log 3 that the R5 can do is very difficult to use. I think it's a fairly specific use case when you really need to wring out every last drop of dynamic range from your footage. And you need to make sure you shoot in very specific settings for like ISO and shutter speed and so forth to get those results. Just shooting in a studio, I'm not particularly concerned about extreme dynamic range. And again, the footage was, I found, difficult to grade. C-Log 2, Baby Bear Soup, liked it a lot. Even Petapixel recently compared the R5 Mark II to, I believe, the Nikon Z8 and the Sony. I would invite you to go to their comparison video, but one of the top Sonys, one of the top Nikons, and this camera, and the R5 Mark II came out on top. And I would have to agree. I think, quite honestly, that the R5 Mark II is the best camera that's on the market right now. I say that knowing that the R1, which is just starting to ship this week, is considered the the next tier up in terms of capability. Really, the R1 is more geared toward, in my opinion, your professional sports photographer who needs that extra speed. It also has a little bit better build quality, apparently, but a lot of professional photographers are going to use this camera, and I just think it's the best all-rounder, on the market today. Really not a whole lot bad about this camera. Much to do has been made about the new Canon batteries here that are for the R5 Mark II, and the fact that if you try to use one of the previous generation batteries in the R5 Mark II and not the new one, that Canon has crippled a lot of functionality, the higher level functionality in the R5 Mark II. Not a big deal, just buy an extra battery. I guess depending on what market you're in, it really wasn't a problem in the US. I was able to order an extra battery, and I'll probably order another one around Christmas, so I have 3. But from my shooting purposes, as long as I have at least 1 extra battery, I can go more than a day of shooting. So that's not a real big deal. A lot was also made to do over the hot shoe cover here, and people not being able to remove it. I've never really had a big problem trying to do that. Basically, what I recommend to anybody is just use, both hands when you do it. It's a lot easier. And as I talk about my written photo review, there are, if you really have problems with it, again, I don't. If you use 2 hands, I think it's not difficult, but there are other hot shoe covers that Canon makes that are for other models, like for the R3 or for the R6 Mark II, that are a little different design and come off maybe a little bit easier, that you can use. But I do believe if you're looking for maximum weather protection, I think this is the better option to stick with. In terms of my complaints, I don't have many. I wish and a lot of people have talked about this with the R5 Mark II. I do wish you had more control over the pre-continuous shooting. When you turn it on, you have about a half second when you hold down a half click of the shutter, like you're going to trigger the autofocus. When you do that, you've got the camera is going to just start shooting for a half second before you hit the shutter. So you'll always have a half second worth of footage prior to when you hit the shutter to ensure that you don't miss the shot. Problem there is if you're shooting at max capability for the camera, which if you're using pre-continuous shooting, you're probably trying to get the maximum frames per second you can out of the camera. Camera shoots at 30 frames per second of full size raw files. That means your pre-continuous shooting, you're going to have an additional 15 images every time you hold down the shutter. Every time you hit that shutter button, you're going to get an additional 15 images. That adds up pretty quickly. Now I've got it set up in the quick menu so I can quickly turn it on and turn it off, but it would be nice if you had some abilities to configure that. It'd be nice if you could have the shooting be at 1 frame rate per second, and then maybe the frame rate for the pre-continuous shooting be lower, like maybe 7 frames per second, or I guess more accurately 15 frames per second, so you only picked up about 7 or 8 extra frames when you did the pre-continuous shooting. Other than that, the camera really is just absolutely perfect. I really like it a lot. Do you need to upgrade from the R5? No, the R5 is still a fantastic camera. Nothing about the R5 Mark II detracts from the R5. It's going to remain a phenomenal, very, very capable camera for years to come. Obviously, if you're a professional shooter and you can utilize some of those higher level functions in terms of the enhanced autofocus capabilities, and in terms of the frame rate, no brainer. If you're like me and you can just afford to to upgrade, by all means do so, but don't feel like you really need to upgrade from the R5, particularly if those capabilities that I've talked about really don't do much for the kinds of shooting that you do. Should you switch over from another system like a Nikon or a Sony? We live in a golden age of photography right now, and there really aren't any bad cameras. Some are better than others, but switching camera systems really is a bad idea unless you've only got 1 or 2 lenses invested in the camera system you're considering switching from. Every time that you sell and rebuy, you're selling the lens, probably at a loss, and then repurchasing, at a retail value for the new lens. It's just a really cost prohibitive option that, you should probably try to avoid unless there's really, really a compelling reason. Cameras are pretty much computers, and the best one on the market is probably going to be the one that was most recently introduced. Don't upgrade or don't switch systems because of the camera body. If you're going to switch for the glass. Canon glass, I believe, is the best from any manufacturer. That's why I've stuck with them for about 25 years. I do believe their autofocus system, as of this recording, is the best on the market. So they do, in my opinion, have some competitive advantages. And I know the Sony guys are probably going to come at me in the in the comments, but I'm not the only one with this opinion. So take it for what it's worth. But again, switching camera systems, pretty cost prohibitive. If there's not a really compelling reason to do so. Well, there you have it. There is my kind of supplemental review of the Canon R5 Mark II and kind of comparing it to the Canon R5. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Take care. God bless. We'll see you in the next one.
I hope you've enjoyed this production from the ThruMyLens YouTube channel. If you did, please click on the like button and do share the video on social media. If you'd like to see more content like it, please do subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and do check out ThruMyLens at www.thrumylens.org.